Good afternoon, ladies and gents. My name is Mark Hughes. I'm from NSRI Rescue, and we're on the aft deck of Rescue 17, our first South African built ORC 140, built by Two Oceans Marine here in Cape Town. Here we are standing next to Rescue 17, our South African built ORC 140. The ORC, by the way, stands for Offshore Rescue Craft. She was sponsored by a lot of people, and you can see all their names in the Rescue 17 on the side of the vessel. We had a lot of sponsors who donated money for this vessel. So we currently moored outside the Rescue 3 base, the V&A. We'll go on board her now and we'll do a quick walk around and show you what we got. So we're going to do a bit of a tour and walk around and show you some of the features of this rescue boat. So we'll proceed up the starboard side and start at the bow. Alright, so here we are on the bow of Rescue 17. She's a beak design vessel, designed for heavy seas, designed in France, and this one has been configured specially for sea rescue here in South Africa. So on the bow we have the normal tackle, anchor, windlass for anchoring the vessel. Behind us we have a 10-man life raft, and you'll notice these handles. This is something that the additions we had Viking put on for us. So when you need to lift the life raft out here, you can actually grab the handle. You don't have to battle your fingers underneath here. I've got the escape hatch, the forward cabin open because it's a bit hot inside there. And you'll notice this partition across the foredeck here, and that is the separation of the cabin, the wheelhouse, from the hull, and I'll explain that more to you later on, but you'll be asking questions, why is that there? Some other things that we've done: all the windows are bonded in, there's no window frames, again to prevent leakage as the vessel gets older. So up on top of the coach roof we have the two VHF antennas. In front of the spotlight we've got the Wi-Fi antenna, and then going up to the mast we have our trunking radio antenna and our AS antenna, and then all the normal navigation lights that you have for a vessel like this, our Furuna radar dome, and the FLIR camera sitting behind it. We'll go around to the after of the vessel now and we'll talk about what's on our aft deck. So you'll notice this little step here, and it's one of the innovations that Station 10 came up with, is that the short buggers like myself can't reach the antennas to fold them down. So we put a little step there. You can stand on the step to put the antennas down when the boat goes into the boathouse. Another safety feature is the safety rail, which runs around the whole of the external of the boat, around the wheelhouse, and crew that are going up the side here in bad sea from their life jackets clip onto here, and they're able to walk up and down with this car that follows them on the track. And their safety harness, if they fall, they end up on the deck and they won't go overboard. So the length of the safety harness is the right length to keep them on board the boat, and this car keeps them on board. So here we are on the aft deck of Rescue 17. You'll notice it's actually a very wide aft deck. The deck's got a slight camber to it, like this, to allow for water runoff. Starting on the port stern quarter, obviously you've got our cleat there for moorings, and this is one of our new innovations. This is our freshwater flushing system, and I'll explain to you how that works downstairs with the engines. So we're able to flush our engines and our air conditioners with fresh water when we're in the boathouse. Moving up underneath the life ring here, we have our port engine discharge fire pump, and again when we're downstairs in the engine room I'll explain to you how that all works. We have the same on the starboard side. That's the starboard bilge pump, fire pump, and you'll notice as we're walking around here we've got these deck hatches. We have 5 hatches on the aft deck, 2 for the engines, port and starboard, 2 for the hatches, and 1 as an escape hatch out of the rudder space compartment downstairs. All of these can be opened from inside. And then this little invention comes from my father-in-law's Zimmer frame. Those little foldable frames, walkers that they've got, and This is able to fold up. It pulls out of the deck. If the guys, when you're involved in towing operations, you want to clear this, the seat comes off and gets stowed, and this gets picked up, folded, gets stowed, and you have free access to the deck. But in this configuration, it's a lovely seat to sit in when you're at sea. Again, one of the little things that the Rescue 10 guys asked us to think about, and we came up with that. And we knew when we were in France with hull 1 that to go from the Flybridge to the aft rail, it's a long space to cross in a bad sea. You've got to have handles you can hold on to as you go down, and that was the reason we put this in. So up here now on the aft of the wheelhouse, this box here is the engine room air inlet system. So inside here we've got 2 fans that are pressurizing the engine room with fresh air, obviously to supply the engines with air and keep it cool. And on this side we have the engine air exhaust, so the air gets forced out of here. So we're putting in more air than we need to run the engines and keep them cool, and we exhaust air out of here to keep the engine room cool. Then these, you might be wondering, what are these steel plates for? So you'll notice them on all the engine room air intake and air outlet boxes, and that is for in the case of capsize. So what happens if this vessel capsizes is these plates close off your engine room air and your air outlet, and stop water getting into the engine room as the vessel capsizes and self-rights itself. Then they slide down again for normal operation. In case of a fire, these get raised, get locked in place with these locking pins here, and you're able to fight your engine room fire. Over here on the port side, we have our man overboard gantry frame. This is for recovering people out of the water, and it's rated at 125 kilos with a safety factor of 25% on top of that. So you're able to recover a person out of the water in a Stokes basket, a person who's suffering from hypothermia, or a deceased person, and get them onto the deck. And this man overboard recovery frame swivels around all the way around here, and you're able to deposit the stretcher onto the deck. So it makes it easier for recovering people. Forgot about this at the back before we go forward. This is for when you want to go down onto your swim platforms at the back. We've got 2 dive platforms here, a ladder in the middle, handles there, that if you have swimmers in the water from a marine incident, you're able to put crew on these aft platforms to recover people up the ladder, so as you're walking wounded. And obviously in towing operations, this gets opened, the tow rope goes through here, this thing gets closed, and one end of your tow line goes onto your bollard, other end goes to your casualty. So below this hatch here is where the tow rope's kept. There's a 200 meter 32 millimeter polysteel tow rope kept downstairs there. So the Flybridge, if you look at the Flybridge, it's built for 2 people, a helmsman up here, and another person can stand next to him. We'll show you all the instrumentation now. And on the right of it is the mast, and you're looking up at the base of the mast. Sorry, we're looking into the sun, and you can see the radar dome, the FLIR camera, the flags and the antennas. And this mast is able to be lowered down, so you've got a winch upstairs there, a locking mechanism there, and you lower it down and you're able to pull the boat into the boathouse. So we reduce the height to get into the boathouse. If we didn't do that, we'd need like a 10-meter boathouse door to get it in. So by lowering it, we only need a 7.5-meter door. So that's pretty much on the aft deck. I think we'll nip upstairs here and quickly show you what's going on the Flybridge, so you can see from the top. So we're on the Flybridge of Rescue 17. This is the outside driving position. You have your engine stop-starts, your Cummins port motor, starboard motor, rudder angle, Fruno repeater, your Humphrey trim tab control system, and this operates the searchlight in front of us. And turning around, we have our EPIRB over here. Very good position for when you're maneuvering alongside and in harbours. You've got a very good view from upstairs here. Does tend to get a bit windy up here in bad weather, but this actually protects you a lot from spray. Very good position to helm the boat in close quarter maneuvering. Okay, so we're going to be going inside into the wheelhouse now. But before we go through there, I just want to talk about this Wheelhouse door and show you what it's like. It's a purpose-made door. It's made to keep this boat watertight when she is immersed, and capsize or in heavy weather. It stops water getting inside. It closes. It's got dogs that dog it inside, so it can't open. And then here's a little innovation we did, is we fitted these hatches to the air inlet and air outlet boxes, and that comes from Durban, the Durban crew with Alec Rennie. So we realized we couldn't get inside there to clean, so we had to get access inside there, so we put these in. So hats off to the Durban guys. Let's go inside. So here we are on the Wheelhouse of Rescue 17. So earlier on I showed you that separation gap on the foredeck of the wheelhouse and the hull, and what that is that this entire wheelhouse is separate from the hull. It sits on a polymer mounting system that absorbs noise and vibration. So the deck we're standing on now is about 50 millimeters off the hull deck, and it's a completely enclosed capsule. So with the main wheelhouse door closed, that hatch closed, we're in a totally sealed environment, and that's what makes this vessel self-righting if these hatches are closed. We've got the normal sort of things. We've got shock mitigating seating here using pneumatic suspensions, so you're able to adjust them. Whoops, I haven't got batteries on. That gives you the ability for each person to adjust the seat to suit themselves. So these two positions here on the starboard side are for the two deck crew. They sit here, and then around here in this seat sits our bosun, who is responsible for the engineering on board, and for his responsibility also includes the management of the deck crew, setting up tow ropes and all that sort of stuff. Sitting in that seat sits our navigator, who has the own chart plotter, has the trunking VHF radio there, and the two command mics for the two VHF radios. So the navigator is also our radio operator, and the navigator's sole responsibility is to make sure that this vessel stays on course and keeps it out of danger, doesn't allow it to run aground. Underneath here we've got all storage things for all the paperwork that needs to get filled in to keep a log of the vessel, what it's doing. You'll notice too that we put hatches everywhere, all over the boat, and that's for ease of maintenance. So I'll open this one up, and you can see ease of maintenance to get in to maintain things. We don't have to take out headliners to do maintenance. Another little trick we learned with our older breeds and with the Rodmans, and again, the reason of all these deck hatches is to make sure that when we have to maintain this boat, take an engine out, we can do it. We don't have to cut the deck open. That's good. So going forward, you'll see this lovely floor we're standing on. This is sea deck. It's a 5 millimeters thick compression high density foam sponge that diesel, petrol, paraffin, oil, Q20, whatever. It's quite safe for any of those products to be spilt on it. And we use it again as an insulator for sound, and it's easy to walk on. It's not a hard thing to walk on. Coming up forward, so up here we have the coxswain sits in the right hand seat. He's in charge of the vessel, and sitting next to him is his helmsman, who's actually driving the vessel. The helmsman has his own screen, the coxswain has his own screen, and the navigator has a screen. So the navigator inputs the nav data, and the helmsman's job is to make sure it stays on course and keep the vessel safe in all different types of sea conditions. So up front here, we have down here, this is all the electrical switches for the vessel, bilge pumps, mechanical bilge pumps, automatic bilge pumps, all your navigation lights, all your interior lighting, house bank voltage, and the current we're currently drawing. We have another set of windscreen wipers here that the coxswain can operate if the helmsman is busy. He can operate here for him. USB chargers, air conditioning. We are air conditioned, which is a huge advantage in rough weather and bad weather. Flow control system for the flow camera upstairs, so it's controlled from here or from the screen, and this is a remote controller for the screen as well. 2 VHF radios operating off the antennas on the coach house. We have a Statex firefighting system downstairs, and I'll point it out to you when you're downstairs there. It's currently live. It's behind the safety glass, which pulls off, so it's protected, so there's no accidental activation of it. This is part of our high water alarms. Each compartment we've got alarms, high level switches, so if there's a flooding takes place, you get an alarm here and it'll come up here and tell you what alarm's on and it goes off. Vessel intercom, so we've got an intercom system to downstairs, engine room and port cabin, so you're able to talk through, and then the guys go into the engine room, so you can monitor them on the monitors. We've got a monitor for the engine room and a monitor for the aft deck. We've got 3 cameras on board, one in the engine room, one looking at the aft deck and one looking forward. The aft deck and the forward-looking cameras, we record that data, that is archived, and only when we need to pull that data from some incident can we download it. It takes us too much too much data to download all the data all the time. Up here we've got the engine instrumentation, again the rudder indicator, compass for the helmsman. This is the stop-start panel for your engines, ignition's on, start, and over here we've got your steering pump, which is an electrical steering pump, so it's very easy to drive this boat. And we've got the fans, engine room fans. We've got 2 fans that you run for engine room cooling. Over here is our Humphrey control system. So we're not running the conventional trim tabs, we're running a Humphrey system, which is basically a blade that goes down to the water, and it's all done electrically. Controls, you're able to synchronize these motors. Once they're in gear, you hit the sync button and then you just drive it using one gear stick, and your motors are perfectly synchronized. Again, another control unit, button control unit for the helmsman's multifunction display and his windscreen wipers, and of course the horn here that you can play around with. So throughout the vessel we fitted with white and red lights. So upstairs here you'll see the normal white lighting. We can switch to red lighting, and we can switch down here to white and red lighting as well when we see at night, so not to interfere with our night vision. Upstairs here are 2 fire extinguishers, one on the starboard side and one here midships at the navigator's table. That's pretty much it. We've got 5 windscreen wipers up here. So the 3 front windows have got wipers, and the 2 windows in port and starboard have got wipers. So all our safety equipment is in the safety locker. So inside here is all our safety equipment that you take if you had to abandon ship. We have 2 handheld VHF radios that are on board permanently, that are charged on board permanently. And again, if you need to transfer a crew to another vessel, they'll take a handheld radio with them. Off they go. So I think what we'll do now is we'll go downstairs into the forward cabin, and we'll give you a quick tour down there, and then we'll go through into the engine room, and we'll give you a breakdown of what is an engine room and how it all works. We're downstairs in the forward cabin now. We came down from the steps from the wheelhouse, and we have a waterproof door upstairs there, and in here is the waterproof seal that separates the wheelhouse from the hull, and that is that gap I was talking about all the way around. This is the gap that's underneath here. Downstairs here we have a small microwave for the crew to heat up food. We've got thermos for water, cold water or hot water. We have a sink with an electric pump that pumps from a 40-litre tank, and you can actually make a cup of coffee here on the hot water cycle. Its valves go through here, and you've got a valve here to isolate it if you have to. And this is for the electrical supply for the sink. Moving forward, more storage space. There's lots of storage space under the seats. I'm not going to open it now. This is the forward area of the vessel, and again we have a lot of storage space. Up front here we have the anchor box. Inside there's the anchor chain and the anchor rope. which goes through the deck up here, and there's the controls for the windlass on the deck and its electrical circuitry to make it work. Along the sides here, port and starboard, more storage space to store equipment. We've got lots of storage space on the boat. Again, more storage space. We've got a spine board in here, one of these big fenders for coming alongside at sea. This is a strop, not for use in helicopters. This is for recovering people out the water on your man overboard gantry. So you'll see here now, this is the Survivor life jackets. We carry 10 on board as part of our requirement for SAMHSA. We've got an air conditioning system fitted downstairs here. So that is one of its air outlets. The air conditioner sits below the bunk here, and other air outlets are forward, and it works extremely well inside here when the air conditioners are running. We've had to do things like this. Up here, inside here, is a non-return valve that if this vessel is inverted, that valve closes to stop water coming into the forward cabin. So we make up 10% fresh air into the air conditioners when we're running. If you don't do that, it becomes very stale inside here. So the whole time we're sucking in fresh air. If the boat is inverted, that valve closes automatically. And there's also one like that for the Wheelhouse. Moving forward here, so this is the bulkhead door going into the tank space. We'll talk about that now. Up here, this is where all the medical equipment will be housed, all your jump bags, etc. And behind this locker here, we have all O2 bottles that are all in place and strapped down. So we carry 4 O2 bottles on board. Stokes basket is stored here, and it can be used upstairs in the wheelhouse on a framework. It goes over the 2 crew seats. They fold down, so you can treat a patient up there if you have to. So that's pretty much it here. Again, perhaps I should tell you that this vessel is designed for a crew of 6 and to take on 23 survivors. So you've got, if you've got 23 survivors on board here, the crew of 6, you've got people sitting everywhere. And she's designed to take on that amount of people in bad conditions. So below us here is high level alarms that goes to the dashboard upstairs, which when I pushed it, these little red lights came on. And there's an electric pump here, bilge pump, which pumps out the side. So the yellow fitting is bilge. It pumps out the side. So if you have a flooding incident here, the pump automatically comes on if it's an auto upstairs, part of the SOPs, and the alarm comes on to tell you you've got a flooding in your forward cabin. And we also have a mechanical suction here as well, which I'll explain to you once we're inside here. So we've just come through the forward cabin bulkhead. So this waterproof, watertight door, it's got 4 dogging handles on it to enable it to be really securely dogged down. It has a seal all around, and it would then make the forward compartment totally waterproof from this area if there's flooding taking place here. So we open this. Whoops, getting caught on the handle. So this is the fuel tank space. We have a small workbench here. So if you need to do anything, clean things, you have a workbench here. Below here is all your engine spares, engine tools, fresh water for your flushing system for your windscreens, and this here is your manual fuel tank gauge. So it starts at the top and goes all the way down through the workbench, and you're able to manually see how much fuel you got on board. This is the starboard fuel tank. There's 1,000 litres of usable diesel inside there when she's full. We have electronic gauges on as well, which feed to the engine instrumentation, so they can see it. If you look in the forward corner there, you see the pipes. Those are your fuel filler pipe coming in, and your breather pipe going to your fuel tank. The tank capacity is actually 1,060 litres, but there's 1,000 litres of usable fuel. We also have 220 volts for the vessel. You can plug in drilling machines, vacuum cleaners, all that sort of thing. This is the headset that when the person goes inside, he can communicate with the wheelhouse, and they can talk to him if he finds something. We also have alarms all over the place. bilge alarms and fire alarms. And in here we have the toilet. So again, port side fuel tank, same as the starboard side. You can see it better here now. We even put in a toilet roll holder, and there is toilet paper inside there. So again, similar tank setup as to the starboard side. Underneath us here, under the deck plates, we have another electric bilge pump, another high water level alarm, and a mechanical pickup for bilge, which I'll explain to you inside. So let's go inside. So here we're inside the engine room of Rescue 17, and I'm not a very tall person, so I fit in here with a bit of headroom. It's the biggest engine rooms we have in our fleet at the moment. The breeds, the Rodmans don't have this sort of space. So we'll start up front here. Well, let me start at the back and we'll work our way forward, so you guys can see what's going on. In the rudder space compartment, here's this hatch I was talking about early on, which you can go through here to get to escape if something's going on inside the engine room. We have our batteries for our engines here. So each engine has an isolator, port and starboard isolator, with a parallel isolator in the middle, and the batteries for the engine sit here. So let me talk a bit about the engine battery system. So each engine has its own alternator and its own batteries for starting that have got nothing to do with anything else on the vessel. They're purely there to start that particular engine, and that alternator is purely there to charge that starting bank. So this panel here is totally separate from any of the house load on the vessel. So what we've got behind the bulkhead door is the hydraulic power pack for your steering. It's an electrically operated power pack, which you switch on at the control panel on the dashboard. These valves are in front of us here. This is your manual bypass valve. So that valve in the middle you would open, and you would close the other two valves to enable you to use the emergency steering. Downstairs now, in that aluminium box, is the house bank, and there's two 200 amp hour batteries inside there that supply the house bank. Obviously this here is the rudder. This is the starboard rudder. Down there is the starboard Humphreys system, which we use for our trim and control. Upstairs here is the controller that does that, so you interface with that unit from the Flybridge or from the Wheelhouse. And below us here on the deck plates is more electric bilge pumps and mechanical pump as well. So just turning around, Kirsten, it has a steering, so hydraulic steering system, and the steering rudder indicator gives you an indication of what the angles are. Okay, so Kirsten's going to turn to her right and show you the main house bank distribution board with its controls. At the bottom is the isolator to turn on the main house bank. Behind the house bank is the inverter, and I'll tell you what that's for now. And then behind the exhaust is the battery charger to charge the house bank. Each set of batteries, the starting batteries, port and starboard starting batteries, each have their own floating charger to maintain the batteries. So does the house bank. And the house bank supplies electrical power to the radio bank through a converter. So it keeps it all separate, totally isolated. So then, getting Kirsten's turn around to her left, you'll see a bank of manifolds, this valve arrangement here, and this is the mechanical bilge pumps that is run off the starboard engine, port engine. And the pump sits underneath here. It's driven off a shaft that runs off the center of the motor, and next to it sits the 250 amp hour alternator, which charges the house bank. And the starboard engine is exactly the same, has the same thing, alternator, bilge pump, and the bilge pumps can be set in bilge mode or fire mode. So depending on what you're doing, you always leave the bilge pumps in mechanical mode for bilge, and you have this valve here open, this valve closed, this valve goes to the rudder space, this is the engine room. And then up front, I have the same here for this engine, and again, always leave the valve open for bilge for the engine room. And again, below our feet here are all the electric pumps. There's 2 electric pumps inside here for bilge, and there's 2 mechanical takeoff points. So I said earlier that each bilge pump could act as a fire pump, and over here is a 3-way valve down there, which you always leave in the bilge mode. And if you have a fire that you're going to fight, you put it to fire, and this engine will then run as a fire pump and pump fire water to the deck, which goes through your hose to fight the fire with. So we've got a very interesting setup here of this boat. To get a weight distribution right, the gearboxes are separate from the engine, and what is underneath here is what's called a cardan shaft. It's basically a prop shaft you'd find on any big heavy duty truck. This is the gearbox. This is called an inverted V gearbox, and we're using ZF gearboxes here, ZF 370V, and the ratio is 2.48 to 1. And then we go through the cardan shaft onto the back of the flywheel on the Cummins engines. Let's talk a bit about these guys. So these are Cummins 8.3 litre aftercooled turbocharged marine diesels, developing 442 kilowatts at 2,880 RPM. They little packets of dynamite once they get going. My hand here is on the turbo. This is the air cleaner, air coming in, and this is the exhaust. And this here is the cooling water that's passed through the engine. The seawater gets injected into the exhaust where we atomize it, and by atomizing it you drop the exhaust temperature. So running out of here without cooling is most probably under max load, max RPM, close to 800 degrees C. We atomize it and it drops it to below 100. These are rubber bends. So if you run this boat without cooling water, you will destroy these bends very quickly. And we've got all sorts of tricks up here. This is a temperature sensor, so it's sensing do I have water flow. And if I don't, it brings up alarms and puts the engine into limp mode. So we've got 2 of these Cummins engines in here. We've got a total of 12,000 horsepower. And what that does for us is that it enables this vessel to hit her design speed of 28 knots with no problems. And in fact, there's a bit of fat built in there, and she does it a little bit faster than that. We've got what's called a left-hand, right-hand pair here of engines. So you'll see that dipsticks are all in the center, easy for servicing. You'll notice this is the oil filter on the starboard engine, and here's the oil filter on the port engine. It's all made to make it easier to service it, so you don't have to climb around all the engines to service them. All the through-hole bulkhead fittings that go through these bulkheads. So this bulkhead here and the bulkhead behind Kirsten seal this engine room off. So all the through-hole fittings are sealed, and if you look over here, you'll see that one there's that red putty in it. That's fire retardant putty, and it's a sealant, so it stops any water getting through this bulkhead. So all the cables go through fittings like that to ensure the watertight integrity of the vessel. So we've got lots of piping here, which you'll see arrows on them. They all mean things. And below my feet here is the main sea cocks and the main sea water strainers. You might be able to get a look through there, Kirsten, if you have a look. All the piping is stainless steel that goes to the engine. So let's look at this one. This is the pipe coming up from the port motor, goes through the valve first, through the seawater strainer, comes up here, goes into the pump. This is going through the pump. It's mechanically driven from here. The older vessels use V-belts. Today it's all mechanically driven. Goes from here into the gearbox cooler and the fuel return cooler. From there into your aftercooler to cool the aftercooler down. It then goes to the heat exchanger, which is sitting up here, to cool your heat exchanger down, which is where your engine coolant is. And you'll see the bottle at the back with the blue coloured engine coolant in it. And then once it's been through there, it comes out of here gets injected into exhaust, goes through your whole exhaust, goes to the water lock, that big glass fiber box down here, that's your water lock, and that's to stop water flowing back up your exhaust into your turbo and gets injected out through the transom of the boat. And you'll notice the size of that exhaust tube compared to the size of the exhaust. Starts off the size and it ends up as 200 millimeters. And that's to reduce the back pressure as it's going out. This is where the air comes in from the air intake box upstairs. So it comes in through here, you can see the fans, and pressurizes this whole engine room. And the outlet air goes up the other side, which is exhausted. So this is where the outlet air goes up here to get exhausted. You'll notice over here on the starboard side, those orange pipes, orange fittings and all the black piping, that is the power steering hydraulics assisted system. And there's drawings that mean everything, what P2 and V2 is, all the rest of it. So that's all done here. And then moving up here, this is the statics fire system. It's an aerosol generated fire system, and it's got a 10-year shelf life. So we don't have to service that unit for another 10 years. It's just periodic maintenance. Behind it, you'll see a valve and a cable that's operated from the helmsman seat upstairs. There's another valve down here, and those are your fuel shut-off valves. In case you have an engine room fire, you shut those valves. And then there's a whole firefighting procedure you follow for fighting fires in an engine room. Here we have the brains of the Cummins engine. When we've got power on, you're able to start the engines from here. All your engine instrumentation is displayed here. And what we did is we went one step further and we fitted a redundant system to the vessel. So by switching the switch off here, say I have a problem with this unit, it's not operating, switch that switch and it switches us to the next box of brains, and we're able to continue to run the vessel. So it's part of the redundancy that's built in. The whole engine room and the rudder space has fire alarm sensors built in. So if anything goes wrong inside here, you will get an alarm telling you that you have a fire, and on your monitor you'll be able to see what the severity of the fire is and whether you're going to send crew down here to fight that fire or whether you're going to shut down and go to your firefighting setup to activate the static systems. We spoke earlier about the air conditioning. So we have two air conditioners on board, one for the forward cabin and one for the wheelhouse. And over here are the air conditioner pumps. They're 220 volt pumps. And down here we have its filter where the water comes in. And down there, which Kirsten got, is the water inlet from outside that comes in. So we have one on port and starboard side. This is slightly different here, is that this is our AC DB. So all our AC power comes in here. You can see the inverter at the moment is running, but we're not connected to shore power. And then we have a system where you're able to run both engines off one fuel tank. And down here is the main fuel line coming from the bottom of the fuel tank. That's the port fuel tank. Comes through this pipe, comes to here. From there, goes to the engine. This is the valve that separates the port and starboard tank. If I want to run both engines off one tank, I would open this valve here, which is the fuel return valve, because you want all the return fuel to go to the same tank, and I would close off the feed valve on the back of the tank there from upstairs, and you can run both with one fuel tank. So, in a brief run through, that's what we got here on board Rescue 17. Which is a beautiful boat. We hope to deliver this weekend. 3rd, 4th of December to Hermanus. So we're all looking forward to it, and the crew at Hermanus are itching to get their hands on this baby.